What's going on? Welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to talk to you about NIO. I want to go over some of the data points, break it down what moved in, go over everything else you need to know. But first, make sure to hit that thumbs up. And with that, let's get right to it. So NIO did go down 5.76%. So a little bit of a rough day. 696 the low, 737 the high. So a lot of volatility. And as I've mentioned in previous videos, I think NIO is becoming one of those stocks that's very, very good to day trade if you know how to kind of time it. And ultimately, a lot of volume today, 92 million shares being traded, 99 is the average. There is, interestingly enough, some abnormal transactions that just occurred after hours, but I'll talk on that later in the video. The only thing that really came out, so no official news from NIO, no SEC filings, but the only thing kind of came out was this. So more milestones associated to Firefly. So Firefly CEO Daniel shared that deliveries this month will surpass 5,000 units, with the brand on track to hit 20,000 units by the end of the month. So still another milestone. So they really need to hit this. And I think based on just the registration numbers, of course, registration and deliveries might not be exact, but I think it is fair to assume that this 5,000 could be hit, but still, it's kind of funny how NIO loves their milestones. Nonetheless, the only other thing that kind of came out was just Bazinga. And this article went on about kind of exporting to Europe and how Chinese vehicles are doing fairly well despite the tariffs. And that's something that's supposed to have been kind of taken off the table a long time ago, is those tariffs. Because for those of you that do remember, Europe said, hey, once we come to a deal with the States, then we'll start to negotiate tariffs with the EU. And that hasn't actually started yet. So that could be, again, another good potential catalyst coming down the pipeline. But even right here, it says from January to July 2025, companies like BYD, NIO, XPeng have shipped over 19 billion in electric vehicles. So NIO, I think out of the three, are rather on the low end, but nonetheless, it goes to show that Europe is a good target. And if those tariffs do get dropped off and get reduced significantly, or similar to Canada, how they did lower and kind of quash those Chinese tariffs on EVs, then that's just going to open up Pandora's box. Because I think it is fair to assume that a lot of the Chinese EVs do have fairly good technology over American or even European EVs. So again, that's kind of what came out. So in my opinion, that's all relatively optimistic. So the price action doesn't really jive with what truly happened, but we do have shorts. So they did return 190,000 shares. There's more than enough ammunition for them to really double down and triple down. So by them returning today, in my opinion, that goes to show that they don't really feel like today's push lower is justified. 11.19% of the free floats being shorted, works out to be 154.81 million shares overall being shorted. DTC sitting at 1.95 days, so still goes to show that shorts are overextended. So if NIO over the next couple of quarters can actually hit their milestones, very ambitious milestones that they've mentioned over the various, I guess, last earnings and various launches, then NIO stock price will just really move higher. But aside from all that, looking at the options, we had 11 million in calls, 2.3 million in puts, 44% of all the options being done were bullish in nature. So again, this is why I like to analyze a lot of this data points, because it does signal that today's push lower wasn't justified. So people do assume that NIO will recover. So again, something to keep in mind. Aside from that though, with it luckily enough closing at 704, that does mean that the $7 strike prices and below are considered in the money. So we have 23,000 at that 7, 9,000 at that 650, 7,000 at that 6. So you won't be seeing a mother vol gamma squeeze, but you could see a nice little pump up going into next week. So again, something to keep in mind. It would have been advantageous for NIO to close above 8, but wishful thinking. Aside from that, you did see a lot of good transactions occurring both in the secondary market and also the dark pool. So first thing, you did have big money actually buying the NIO dip, and that's something that you don't see too often. So you had one sell right here for 120, but aside from that, everything else was buys. On the dark pool, this is what I did mention at the beginning, how there was some abnormal transactions. So 2.4 million that was done at 3 pretty much right after the bell, then a $57.2 million transaction, and then 1.29 million. Of course, as I've mentioned in the past, dark pool is meant to be anonymous, so it is very difficult to tell whether these are buys or sells, but you can kind of see some of the transactions beforehand as well as what happened on the actual chart. And so you can kind of see as soon as that did happen, it went up like crazy. So essentially, I do believe that those were buys. So again, why would some institution buy $57.2 million just in one transaction? And that wasn't market makers covering call options or anything. That was just some institution buying. So definitely very interesting stuff. I'll hit refresh just to see if there's any more that's coming out. So it looks like a new one as well, just about 10 minutes ago. So 2.4 million. So definitely good to see. With it closing at 704, it is trading between this pivot and this S1. 668 is going to be that next strong support. Flip side, 713 and then 758. So stay tuned for my video over the weekend where I go over some expectations and everything else. But aside from all that fun stuff, there wasn't really all that much in articles coming out associated to NIO, aside from that one that came out from Bazinga. Algos were rather timid today, so a lot of the volume did actually come from institutions buying and selling. Today, unfortunately though, it did close below that 10-day moving average. Doesn't mean like end of the world is happening, but a little bit more of a slowing momentum. And I think generally speaking, NIO bounced off of that 760 mark general range twice now. So typically you see further consolidation before it does attempt again. So I think that might be actually occurring over the next little bit. But nonetheless, I think NIO still did do fairly well. It's just once it gets over that 760 mark, then this is where you could see some pretty big, nice pushes higher, whether it be, I think it's premature to start assuming 23 and so forth, but if it can get double digits, then that's deserving of a round of applause. So let me know your thoughts on NIO. What's your viewpoint on why it went down so much? Did you buy the dip or did you sell? So what's your kind of general 2 cents on all that? One final thing, pop over to my Patreon if you're looking for some solid buy signals on stocks, options, crypto, many of which have been absolutely on point, worthwhile to pop over there and take a look. With all that said, appreciate all of you watching.